Let's go here and do the countdown thing. Hey, everyone. Let's turn the mute button off. That's a good way to start a podcast. This is Dan Viens, and you're listening to the Gulls Podcast. Been away for a minute. It's been a week and a half, couple of weeks. We're not officially into the offseason yet, at least for the Seahawks. We are on championship weekend, still 4 teams in play for the Super Bowl. But we have a ton of stuff to talk about, Seahawks related and otherwise. And who better to do that with than my lovely co-host, Dayna. Dayna O'Gorman, how are you?
I am super good. I'm excited to talk football again.
I know, right? It's only been, I think it's been a week and a half.
About a week and a half, yeah.
Last Monday, I think I did the Jason Myers update, and that was kind of the last, or the breaking news there. But then we had some breaking news, and let's just get that out of the way right off the bat. Obviously, the announcement last week that the SB Nation network that runs Field Gulls and all of the geographically centered sports websites and the podcasts that are affiliated with them, like yours truly, you on Field Gulls, Brandon with the Seahawkers, and of course, Jackson with Cigar Thoughts. SB Nation is pulling the plug on their basically all podcasts. I think a couple of NFL podcasts have survived the cut. So I just want to have a brief discussion with you about that so that we can, for the most part, let our listeners know that, first of all, we're going to be with you through the month of February, that our current contract and our agreement runs out February 28th, that we've been given that long to continue to do the show. And we will continue to do the show because there's a lot to talk about. And also because you have other things going on. I have some plans in the works, and we want our listener base that's so good to us to know so that they can continue on with us wherever we go. So let me just get your quick thoughts on how you feel about that news and what you're working on.
It was a real surprise, and probably the biggest surprise to me is that we kind of heard it through the grapevine before we heard it from our actual employers to begin with. But here's the thing. I understand that, print media for sure. There's a lot of online media. I know they're all taking a lot of hits right now. I know that there is money questions and issues and things going on. Listen, I'm not going to debate the business of it, right? That's fine. But I'm sad. I am bummed. We got to do this for one season. I got to know a lot of different Seahawks fans that I didn't know outside of the couple of other podcasts that I do. And I really have enjoyed chatting with them and talking with them and getting to know them better. Plus, the great Field Gulls team that we work with, the writers, they're a little wackadoodles, and I love them. Like, they're just kind of crazy. And so that's been a lot of fun.
If the listeners could only see our group chat. There's a lot of stuff going on.
I thought the Hawk Blogger group chat was weird. No, Field Gulls has nothing on them. That's amazing. But so here's the interesting thing about it is that I know that you have plans. I have plans. We have plans together. And I know Brandon has plans on keeping going. It will not be under the SB Nation name.
Right.
That will be the same type of podcast and the same type of information. And I know that SB Nation and Vox Media is still working on what they're going to do with these feeds. And so we don't know what the end game is going to be yet, but we know that we're going to be around. And so people will still be able to find us, and we'll still talk Seahawks football because that's what we love.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important point. If you're listening to the show, you like the show, you enjoy it, you currently subscribe to it so that you get notifications of new episodes and you listen to every episode. And there are many of you. Our number of downloads that we get in our reports is very consistent. It really is. And so we can see in the numbers that we have a very loyal base. if you want to continue listening beyond February 28th to what Dayna and I end up doing, and we'll get much more detailed about that as we go through the month, and we'll have a final wrap-up show before we sign off. Then just if you don't follow us already on Twitter, do that. That's the best way to get that kind of news. And then you'll be able to subscribe to the new show and just slide right over to that. So we'll be talking about those things. Just from a personal standpoint, I would say that, and I've been very vocal about it on this show. Field goals has been a very important place for me to get my Seahawks opinion and information, really ever since they were born, even back to the Danny Kelly days. And it was instrumental for me in getting my Twitter following in that sort of Seahawks family initially. So to be able to be a part of that brand for the last 8 or 9 months, and to be able to talk about one of the most interesting seasons that we've ever seen as Seahawk fans or journalists or podcasters, has been nothing but a blessing. And what I'm planning next and what you're going to do next, I know we'll just build off of that. So, nothing but good feelings about the field goals people. Business is business, and it stinks, but we'll evolve and adapt and move on, just like the Seahawks.
Right. So much evolving, we hope.
Our offseason became an offseason. We didn't even know it was coming. There are some correlations there for sure. Let's talk football.
Yes.
It is championship weekend. We got Bengals at Chiefs in the AFC, 49ers at Eagles. Oh, it hurts for me to say that.
It's okay. Breathe deep.
Let's start there. First of all, just give me your thoughts. Who do you like this weekend, and what are some of your general thoughts about the two matchups?
They're interesting. I really love the Niners-Eagles matchup. I think that that's probably going to be the better game of the weekend. I think that you have a really dynamic offense, and with Jalen Hurts coming back and that very complete Eagles team. The Eagles have been so fun to watch all season. And I know there's a lot of Seahawks fans who only watch Seahawks games. Well, I watch them all. I cover lots of different games. And so I've watched almost all the Eagles games this year, and they are a very complete team when they have the right people on the field. And I've loved watching them. The Niners, I can't say I ever love watching the Niners, but at the same time, can't deny that defense is just ridiculously good. It is very reminiscent. It should be. Look a little familiar to some Seahawks fans, because it is very similar to the Seahawks defense from a few years ago. And then the fun story of Brock Purdy. I mean, I hate that it's for San Francisco, but for that kid to come back and play well. Do I think he's the second coming of Brady, as people have been touting him? No, I don't. But we don't know yet, right? Because he's only played 6 or 7 games. Yeah, he's undefeated, but you have to look at the games they've played and that sort of thing. But I will tell you this, when I look at that game, I really feel that the Eagles have the advantage. And I just think that is because of being the more complete team on both sides of the ball. I just feel like Jalen Hurts is going to give that defense everything that they can handle. And that Brock Purdy, who has a tendency to melt in the face of a pass rush, is going to feel Brandon Graham and those boys in his face a lot. So I still think it'll be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised if San Francisco managed to pull it out, but I just really feel that the Eagles are the more complete of those two teams.
I feel the same way. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this game because I wanted to make sure that my opinion wasn't colored too much by bias.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because I'm not afraid to admit when I think the 49ers are the better team in any given matchup. And I work with some 49er fans, and I've been very forthcoming with them this year about how good I think that team is. But I do think, playing at home is huge. I haven't taken a look at the forecast. It's going to be cold. It's conditions that the 49ers aren't really used to. And look, we could do an entire episode on the phenomenon that is Brock Purdy. And it's amazing what cult-like status it's already risen to, and how I've had some really long discussions on Twitter with 49er fans, and I don't understand why, but they're so defensive against anyone who would dare imply that Brock Purdy isn't the savior and the answer and their 10-year franchise quarterback moving forward. I've just stopped getting into those debates now, because they're just, you can't convince them otherwise. And I'm not saying he's been,
because they could be right, but how are you supposed to know? I mean, remember Baker Mayfield was God's gift to the planet for a while. So
absolutely. And when you look at the skill sets, they're not that different I would argue that Baker has a better arm. I would argue that every quarterback in the NFL may have a better arm than Brock Purdy, but he has something, and he has those other intangibles and other things in his toolbox that equips him perfectly to succeed in that situation. And I think that's the part that fans of the 49ers are seeming to miss. And we're going to roll this into my next thought and how it applies to our quarterback situation with the Seahawks is Brock Purdy's doing great, so he must be great. And that the answer is simply, you shouldn't spend money on a quarterback or picks to move up and get one. Just find the next Brock Purdy. And I think, that this is a very common sort of meme now, and it's become almost cliche, but I've used it many times myself recently. My opinion, or my reaction to that type of opinion, would be, tell me you don't really know the NFL without saying you really don't know the NFL, right? That there are guys drafted in the top 5, top 10 every single year that are supremely more physically talented than Brock Purdy and have track records in college just like he did, and they fail because of the situation. So it's going to be a fascinating case study to see how he does. And I'm not saying he can't win. I could see it going. I could see the 49ers winning wire to wire and in dominating fashion, because I think they're that tightly dialed into what they do well right now. I'm fascinated by both these games, but I just can't wait to talk about it afterwards, because I think it's going to, going into the offseason or the Super Bowl, it's going to give Seahawks a lot to talk about.
It really will. And the interesting thing is just as much on the AFC side, because you look at the Chiefs and the Bengals. So the Bengals have beaten the Chiefs 3 times. There is something about Joe Burrow and the gang that, confuses the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think the biggest storyline there, and let me tell you, I live in Kansas City. These fans are nervous, people. They're nervous. They might be all blustery on Twitter, but they are nervous. Yes. But here's the thing, especially with, Mahomes' ankle, which they can say he has no injury designation.
Don't get me started on that.
I know. So here's the thing, though, with that game. The Bengals are the up-and-coming team. The Chiefs are the 5-year AFC Championship veterans, right? And I think that what is fun about this game is the Bengals they just do not, they care, but they are all in. They have a chip on their shoulder. They're hot-headed. They say stupid stuff, which just makes me laugh, and I love it. And so I think the attitudes going in of, you almost have these elder statesmen, which we kind of started to feel like about the Patriots, right? Oh, they come in, they're so businesslike, blah, blah. And then you have these cocky young kids who just come in and they're all in. And so I think it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very cold in Kansas City that day. That's not going to bother either one of these teams. Weather's not going to have any issue here. I just really feel
Joe Burrow played last week like it wasn't even snowing.
No, it's like it's 80. Oh, it's balmy outside. But so I think that I expect the Bengals to completely zero in on Patrick Mahomes' ankle and make it as uncomfortable, as difficult for him as possible, and hope to God they figure out how to put somebody on Travis Kelce, where, the Jaguars forgot that he was even on the field. So I think we're going to end up with an Eagles-Bengals Super Bowl, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. What I'm looking for is, the Chiefs or the Bengals won't benefit this week from the element of surprise. And by that, I mean, last week, all the injuries on their offensive line. I wonder if the Bills maybe took them lightly. I don't think that happens at this stage, but maybe underestimated how well that offensive line could play, given all those backups that were in there and guys that had struggled the week before when they came in for the starters who got injured. The Chiefs have had, more film, more time to prepare now for this group. That's what was so impressive to me last week about the Bengals. They were able to run the football at will pretty much. Burrow had time to throw, even with 3, of his 5 starting offensive linemen out. So I just can't wait to watch both these games. It's all I'm going to do tomorrow. Just watch every single minute. And I'll be tweeting incessantly about it. Let's talk about the quarterbacks, because it's a big topic of conversation. And the biggest one is 3 of the 4 are making little to no money. Joe Burrow at $9 million a year, average annual value is the highest paid of those on his rookie deal after being the first pick. But 49ers Eagles, Jalen Hurts clocking in at $1.5 million, and Brock Purdy at $934,000. And I meant to look this up and I didn't have time before we hopped on. I I want to see how he got to that, because that's pretty hot. He was the last player drafted, and
it's not rookie minimum.
And he's making $1 million. They paid him more than just slot for that. And I was not aware of that until I looked at these numbers. He's making more than guys like, Gardner Minshew that were drafted a lot higher, other guys that have started. But, combined, they're making $2.5 million. And then Patrick Mahomes at $45 million. And so there's been a lot of this week among fans, especially Seahawks fans. And it ties into the Geno Smith discussion. You shouldn't that goes to show you just shouldn't spend money on a quarterback. You should just go cheap on the quarterback. It allows you to fill out the rest of the roster, as if that's so easy to do. What are your thoughts on that philosophy and that idea and the chatter that we're hearing out there about whether or not you should pay quote unquote mid-tier quarterbacks?
I think it depends. It depends on the quarterback, to be quite honest with you. If you have, you have these young guys, they get good, they work their way up, and they're all basically in their last or second to last year of their rookie contract, right? They're going to have to pay these guys eventually. They hit the jackpot with these younger guys. Well, and Purdy, you can't even say that. They just lucked right into him. I don't even know, that's not even, jackpot.
When they drafted him, they never drafted Brock Purdy with the intention he would ever be their starter.
Exactly. So, but can you look at the Chiefs and say, oh, they shouldn't have paid Patrick Mahomes?
No,
of course not, right? Because he's, currently the best quarterback in the league. So here's what I think. I think that if you have a mid-tier quarterback like Geno, and this is my opinion on Geno's whole situation, is that Geno has done everything that he needs to do in order to be paid at the level that I think most people would think at, between 30 and 35 a year. I don't think anyone would be shocked at that. I don't think anyone would blink an eye on that. Yeah. That allows you then to spend all of these draft picks on other guys and fill other holes, right? And then you don't have to pay them a lot of money, which then you can turn around and you have Geno for a couple of years. And I think really a 2-year to 3-year, probably a 3-year contract, very easy to get out of it the third year if needed, makes a lot of sense for Seattle right now, because what else you need to look at on these teams are very good defenses. And that is something that Seattle is so lacking right now. And so in order to use that first round pick on an offensive player, on a quarterback, is, first of all, a crapshoot, because how many first round quarterbacks have we seen that have not performed even to the level that Geno is?
Right.
And second of all, what needs you more, that offense or the defense? And so it's hard to just say blank check. Teams that go to the Super Bowl are on rookie contract, have rookie contract quarterbacks, because we know that's not true. We've just seen that over the years. Do I think it's your Super Bowl window if you have all the other pieces in place before and a rookie quarterback? Yes, I think your Super Bowl window is much higher at that point. But if you don't have those other pieces, then you're just wasting a couple of years of a rookie quarterback contract. So it makes more sense to me to load up on those other positions first, have them set, and then run, which is much what Seattle did just 10 years ago.
Exactly. And that's what's funny to me is we've seen this. And I think
this is not new.
You touched on something that I think is the most misunderstood or just ignored aspect of this debate among fans, is that teams that have cheap quarterbacks that are in the playoffs in championship weekend stunk for a while.
A long while, some of them.
When they acquired that quarterback, they stunk. And so they were then able to use that savings to build up the rest of their roster, so that by the time that quarterback developed and was ready to succeed, now they're a complete team. Right? The Seahawks have kind of done it the other way around. They were an aging team that tried to reset by letting go some veterans and loading up on the draft, and their roster got a lot younger. I don't believe, ever expected that Geno would play as well as he did and put them in a position of having to make this decision. I think if you sat John Schneider and Pete Carroll in front of us and you gave them truth serum and you asked them what they thought 2022 and 23 were going to be, it goes back to some of the first shows you and I did together, that Geno would play well enough to give us a chance to win this year. And then we were going to be all in on drafting a young quarterback next year and go from there. So a little bit of a curveball, but now, and that's what throws some fans off. You're talking about devoting a significant percentage of the cap to a quarterback when you still have those other holes, as opposed to doing it the other way around. That $30 million breaking point seems to be the issue among fans, that for the most part, I get, in the sense that I get, is that people are cool paying him $30 million on a short-term deal, but don't pay him 35, or don't make that deal 4 to 5 years, because I don't think he's good enough. My overall feeling on it is, and I've come around on this. You and I spent time talking about, can't wait to see that rookie quarterback class and get one of those guys, right? Especially as the season evolved and we saw that Denver pick was going to give us a chance. When you have a good quarterback, you keep him, because they're hard to find. That's how I feel currently. However that happens, whatever it takes. Well, not whatever it takes. If Gino asks for 3 years and $120 million guaranteed, no, go test the market. But I don't think it's going to come to that. I also push back at the fan who says he's an average or mediocre quarterback or had a lucky year. He's a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion. He's an upper tier quarterback. He's not Brady, Mahomes, Burrow. He's not in that class. Never will be. But he's better than Ryan Tannehill, right? He's better. Let's look at the salaries, okay? If $30 million is the breaking point, there are 13 players in the league right now at the quarterback position who are making $30 million a year or more. 14 if you count Tannehill at 29.5. It drops dramatically after that. It drops from 29.5 to 25 for Tom Brady. That doesn't count. He's always taking a discount. From there, it drops down to 15 million, and you're talking Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota, and then the guys on their rookie deal. So this idea that fans just think, just don't pay him, then you're going to be starting over. And I don't, at this point, this is where I've evolved to. I don't want to start over at that position right now. Do you?
No, I have no interest in starting over at that position. Why would you? Why, when you have, and if you want, and even if you don't think that Gino is, a top tier quarterback, which we have to remember his numbers showed that he really was this year. I think that if nothing else, you have to look at, okay, then ask you this, would you have taken Alex Smith his last couple of years in San Francisco or his first couple of years in Kansas City when they were winning? Yes. Most people would say yes. Very similar. They are not these insane, quarterbacks. They're not Mahomes's. They're not, any of these top tier guys, but they are consistent. They get the job done. You can trust them. They don't turn the ball over very often. They are hardly ever injured. And I cringe when I say that about Alex Smith now, but you have all of these things. Would you have paid? And the other thing I think is interesting with this is I'm not sure that the average fan truly understands the quarterback market. You're not going to get anyone to play for you for under 30 million unless they are a Marcus Mariota. You know what I mean? Someone's like, well, why don't you go out and get Carr then? Okay, well, he's going to cost you 40 million. So would you rather take Gino at 10 million less and be able to get a different player? So I think that there's just a little misunderstanding there. We all want to play armchair GM, but what it really is going to come down
fantasy
to
football.
Yeah. And so I think what it really comes down to is the fact that John Snyder said flat out, he has a ceiling. And I have a feeling that ceiling is about 40 million is just my guess. I think that they wouldn't flinch at all paying him 35. And if they did, I'd be totally okay with it, because that extra 5 million can be pushed into something else. It doesn't necessarily have to come off the cap hit. You have to remember the cap isn't real. Although my friend Manny's going to kill me for saying that, but I always say the cap isn't real. And I say that because there's always ways to manipulate it. And so give him his money, let him do what he wants. Let him get what he deserves after the season that he gave us this year. And then have some security for at least a couple years. Give him a 4-year deal. Doesn't mean you have to keep him for 4 years. You can make it so that the last 2 years don't hurt to get out of it. And then really kind of just give that. It's like, okay, we're settled there. Let's focus on everything else.
And also, I would caution fans that when the deal is announced, whenever it happens, whatever the deal looks like when it's announced, take a deep breath and wait for the structure. The people that were freaking out about the Jason Myers extension, because now we're paying a kicker $5 million and we have other needs, then the structure comes out and it's not $5 million and it's not big guarantees, and you can move on from it if you need to in a year or two. And that's the kind of deal we're gonna see.
I think so too.
With Gino, it'll be market value for as good as he is, But let's see what the structure and the guarantees are. What I don't think is going to happen, especially after the Schneider comments that you referenced. And I feel a lot more comfortable about where they're at after listening to him talk, even though, he plays it close to the vest. He reveals some things in his tone. Geno Smith isn't going to sign a 5-year, $200 million. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to see that kind of deal. And I think that's what fans are nervous about. It's going to be a deal with an opportunity to get out of it in a year or two, right?
Probably two.
It's going to appear to be one thing, but really, it might be a 5-year deal, but really it's a 2-year deal. We've seen stuff like that before. It's exactly the kind of deal that Bobby Wagner signed. When you reset the linebacker market at that point, but you could see looking down, 2 years from now, they can move on from him if they want to. And they did. So one more question, and then we'll move off the position, because this is another idea that's being heavily debated out there among Seahawk fans and analysts and journalists. What about playing it both ways and keeping Geno, even just on the franchise tag, and drafting a quarterback? Where do you stand on that?
I'm thrilled with it if it's in the 3rd round. Sorry. This is, I'm not going to be exact around this, but those top tier quarterbacks right now, there are going to be teams spending ridiculous amounts of draft capital and money and trading to get them. There are the teams that want those guys are so desperate. They are going to be, jumping over the top of each other with ladders to get to them. I don't feel like Seattle needs to get into that battle. And so I don't think that they need to look at that. Now, if a quarterback falls and it's one of the top guys or someone, how John Snyder gets just a hardcore football crush on players sometimes. And so, if he's got somebody he's got his heart set on and it's still sitting there, 20, take him. I don't care. I don't care if it's offense. I don't care if it's defense, whatever, if that's what you got to do. But truly, I think that there could be some value in waiting until that 3rd round to maybe then pick up a quarterback. Why not? I mean, God forbid they don't keep Drew Lock. I mean, who cares, right? And so you let that kid sit, you let him learn for a minute, which I'm a big fan of. Now, Lisa, who does the Our Turf Football podcast with me, her big thing is if you draft someone in the 1st round, they are a starter. Come hell or high water, they don't sit. She truly believes that because that is too much capital to waste on the backup. And so I agree with her, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. Unless they are one of those guys that you absolutely have to have, then let them either fight for the job during preseason, much like they did with Russell, or let them sit for a year like Patrick Mahomes did behind Alex Smith. And I think that is hugely, hugely important for some of those players.
Yeah, you make some great points. And in any other year, I would be asking you about the year that Mahomes was drafted by Kansas City with your perspective there, because they had Alex Smith and they didn't have any intention of playing him right away. And there were major question marks about Mahomes coming out. He was a project. And it was they traded up to get him, but there was perception at the time that he was going to go late in the 1st round. And that's where the talk came that, hey, Seattle really likes him and Schneider really likes him. And if Mahomes is there, they're going to take him. And those reports came out on draft day, even though they had Russell Wilson in his prime. I don't see this being a parallel to that because it's not as deep of a quarterback class. It's just not.
Exactly.
The one guy that might throw a wrench in these plans, because I also am on the side, and I know you are too, that there's just other needs. There's other needs. And maybe Schneider was softening us up the other day when he said, we're not going to draft for need. That's why we succeeded last year. We stopped drafting for need, just take best player available.
Yep.
Maybe he was setting us up for that. But the one curveball that I might see is at that 20th pick if one of those guys falls.
Right.
Because we're already starting to hear this is not a great draft class. It's not elite at the top,
so
and it's not deep, and it's because of all the guys that stayed in school. It's NLI changed this year. We've moved past the benefit now of the guys that stayed and took advantage of extra eligibility because of COVID. That's in the past, and now this was kind of the mesh year, the transition year where NLI became a real legit thing. Schools have figured out how to use it. And there are some guys that stayed in school that I'm absolutely shocked decided to pass up on.
Yeah. That list is actually surprising. Every day there for a minute, it seemed like someone's coming out. It's like, I'm going to stay. I'm going to come back for 1 more year. And what that does also,
first round guys.
it's also then turns around and ages your class. And so those people who are like, I want a 22-year-old quarterback, you're not going to get them anymore.
No.
You're not, they're going to be 23, 24. They might even go for 5th year eligibility and be, as old as Russell was when he came out. And so I think that's going to be an interesting domino effect from that too.
Here's a perfect example of what you just described. There's a kid that I really like. His name's Sam Hartman. And he's a 4-year starter at Wake Forest. He's in his 5th year of eligibility. And he just after a successful 4-year starting career at Wake Forest, a guy that I really like, who fits into that 3rd round mold that you described, that would have been a perfect guy to target in this year's draft. And I think could be a perfect fit in a Shane Waldron offense. Decided to play 1 more year, transferred to Notre Dame instead of entering the draft. Decisions like that have robbed this draft at the quarterback position of that depth. So there's 2 slam dunk guys, most people feel, in Stroud and Young. Then there's Will Levis, who's a lightning rod, but some teams love him, and he's probably going to go in the top 5. And then there's Anthony Richardson.
5'9". Like
that's Bryce Young.
Bryce Young is the short.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Okay, yeah.
And he might go number 1. Yeah. Levis is the guy that has all the tools, but his tape just doesn't match it.
Yeah.
Some team's going to talk themselves into him. Anthony Richardson is the guy that if he falls to 20, because there aren't 21st round grades, that's where there's a drop off. There might not be a guy that makes sense at a position of more need. I could maybe see something happening there. That to me would be the only curveball is you take a guy that's a project, he sits behind Geno, and you go from there. I don't know. We'll see. It's obviously going to be a storyline that we're going to talk to death over the next few months. And that's a storyline that I kind of wish we could just hit the fast forward button and get past it so we could just focus on everything else.
It would be nice. I want them to get this deal done with Geno. I just want it done. That's what they want to do. It seems that's what Geno wants to do. I can't think of any other teams that are going to jump for him because the teams that are quarterback needy have the draft capital to go up and get a young guy because they need to save the money. And so, I mean, there might be, and that's not Geno's fault. That's just the way the league is this year. And so I just want him to get it done so we can quit talking about it.
Yeah. Well, let's quit talking about it for now. I was going to go into he comeback player of the year award and your thoughts on that, but we're already running a little long. So speaking of awards, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
The finalists were announced for NFL Coach of the Year. Pete Carroll is not among them. The names are, Brian Daboll, Sirianni from Philly, Sean McDermott, no Pete Carroll. Shanahan, right. Just when you saw that, what were your thoughts?
I was not surprised in the least. Yeah. And the bigger tragedy is going to be when John Snyder does not get executive of the year because
it's already everyone's handing it to Roseman
in Philly. Yeah.
For taking a good team
and making them a little better,
making them gooder.
Yeah. It's fascinating to me. Here's the thing with in Seattle, and I truly believe this, and this is my same feeling. It's going to be on defensive rookie of the year and offensive rookie of the year. The Seahawks are not going to win this. The Jets are going to sweep them. And the reason is I truly believe is because it's a big market team and the Jets fan base is super fickle. The East Coast fan bases are super fickle. And so when they get awards like this, it puts them in, they're very happy. Oh, we're really good. We have someone, and they keep buying tickets. The Seahawks have a very solid fan base. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the reporters, I know for a fact, a lot of like the Pro Football Writer reporters that are in that group are on the East Coast. And so we just have to kind of meet, there is an East Coast bias. It doesn't mean I don't think they're deserving. I really think Brian Daboll should win Coach of the Year, even over Pete Carroll. I really am just shocked at what he has done with that Giants team. Yeah. But at the same time, I just think that Seattle is often forgotten. And when they're not forgotten, they're dismissed. And that's, it's not sour grapes on my part, but I got into a huge argument why Shanahan should not win Coach of the Year. They're like, he's on his 3rd string quarterback, right? With an amazingly fantastic team around him. Yeah. Coaching matters, but it's all the rest of it that put that together. And so that's where I think about, he already had the perfect sauce. He just added a little more salt to it, sort of a thing, So I don't know. I feel bad for Pete and for John because I think that I don't know that they care, but you can't tell me that they wouldn't feel good to win one of those awards. I just don't think it will ever happen. all we can say is that Pete Carroll will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And that's all that we can care about. That's all that should matter right now.
How much longer do you think he coaches?
Oh, God. So at the beginning of this season, I would have told you 2. I would have said this season and 1 more to set up for the next head coach. But after this year, I think we're going to have him for 3. And so, and it probably depends on what happens with the draft this next year and how the season looks after that. But I think he's trying to set up the team for success before he bows out. And I have said all along, I think our head coach is already next head coach is in the building in Desai, unless he gets poached by somebody else. My other big hope is that Dan Quinn is just going to sit there in Dallas until Pete retires and then Dan Quinn comes back home.
I am shocked that it appears now that he might sit out this head coaching cycle.
No, he's going to stay in Dallas. I think Jerry threw a boatload of money at him to keep the defense good. And I think that he has another team in mind, and I'm hoping that Seattle might not be.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, I think that the length of Pete's tenure a lot of that will decide on this draft and this next year. I think that he just feels it. He just feels he's just 2 years away and really
seems energized. He really does. Kind of when the team hit the skids after the great start, you started to hear people say, "Gosh, he seems tired." I think he was frustrated.
Yeah.
But in the ever since the season ended, he seems as fired up as I've ever seen him, and I think it's because he believes they're on the verge of being able to do something good. And also because he likes a challenge and he wants to fix that defense once and for all. And we have picks, we have resources, and he wants to attack it. We'll see how next year goes. I want to comment on one thing you said, because I think he nailed it. Halfway through the season, Seahawks were getting a lot of love as a team that was overachieving, and wow, we didn't see this. And you trade your franchise quarterback, and look what Geno's doing, and look what a great job Pete Carroll's doing. And maybe this isn't a rebuild. But after they went through some of the struggles they did before they finished strong, I think the general consensus that I feel that's out there among the NFL community right now is maybe it was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, and that those 9 wins aren't really legitimate. They had an easy schedule and some things went their way, and it could have been a lot. I do think they're being dismissed, and I hope like heck that they use that as motivation this offseason in the same way that the Bengals are. Because I do think Carroll's energized by that. I do. I think he wants to come back next year. And I think it helps that the best team in the NFC might be in their division, or at least one of them, and one that's like they're primed to be a perennial Super Bowl contender for the next few years. And he likes that challenge, and I don't think he's done with it yet at all. Good stuff. Okay, a couple of questions that we talked about beforehand that I want to get your thoughts on, and then we'll wrap this up. You love defense, and you love talking about defense. And we all know, and we all agree, and we're going to talk about this a lot over the next few months, that the defense needs an infusion of talent. Pete Carroll himself has said, as transparently as maybe I've ever heard him talk, we just don't have good enough guys up there. Right. He's not throwing anyone individually under the bus, but man, we need to be better, especially up front on defense. And specifically, he's referenced these other teams, and they're all the same. I mean, these teams that are, we talk about the quarterbacks, but all these teams left in the playoffs have physical, tough defensive lines, and we need to get there. So I wanted to pose it this way: 11 guys on defense, right? Last time I checked. I think that's how many players are on the field at the same time.
Rumor has it.
I'll Google it. If I put the over on how many new starters do you think there will be on defense opening day 2023? If I put the over under at 5, do you think it's less than 5? 5, more than 5?
It's more than 5. So I'm looking at the list now. So Darrell Taylor will still be there unless he's included in a trade. People have talked about that a little bit. And then I think Nwosu comes back. Diggs will be back. Woolen will be back. Ryan Neal, I think that they'll work a way to get him back. As a starter. I don't think Mike Jackson will be a starter next year. I don't think I hope to God Cody Barton is not a starter next year. No offense, Cody. You just aren't quite good enough. He's a great backup. Puna, That's a real question mark when it comes to his contract.
He probably is going to demand a decent number.
To be honest with you, he would do better on a different team. And I love Puna Ford, but it's not a scheme fit for him. And I hope that he goes somewhere where he can just explode, because
that's one guy that Pete Carroll even did mention by name and specifically said didn't really fit in the role we were using him in.
And obviously they're not wanting to change the scheme. They have not hinted that they're changing any of their coaching staff. And so that's going to be the same. I liked Shelby Harris. I don't know that he would be a starter, but I think they'll probably keep him around. But I think that there'll be more than 5. I think the things that's going to, I will tell you this. I rewatched week 1. Just this last couple of days. I watched the first half yesterday, finished the rest of it today. And I will tell you that Jamal Adams looked freaking amazing until he got hurt.
He's flying around. They were using him.
Oh my God. It was amazing. Yeah. I don't think, as much as people like to, moan and complain about him, I don't think he's going anywhere. It doesn't make financial sense for them to get rid of him this year anyway. They'll wait 1 more year. But God knows if he's going to start next year. His injury was severe and career ending for some players. So we'll have to see how that goes. But the thing with me is Quandre Diggs. And there are people who are like, oh, they might cut Quandre Diggs. So I watched Quandre Diggs. The difference between Quandre in week 1 and the last week of the season this year was a totally different player. And he was better at the end of the year. That tells me that his injury that he had took him a full extra year to get over. Yeah. And so I think that they are going to love what they saw from him. He was flying around. He was intercepting balls. That's what they wanted from him. He'll be back. But I think there could be a lot of shakeup, especially along that line. At least we can hope, right? We can hope so. And I hope they bring Al Woods. I have love for Al Woods. Al Woods is one of my favorite players. He's a great rotational player. And I hope that they bring him back even at 36. Love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And he does fit at that nose position for sure. And that's the risk is we're going to be having these discussions because it doesn't appear that they can really go out and dip into the high end of the free agent market, which they typically don't do anyway. So you're looking at playing a lot of young guys together on that defensive line, or, trying to add a couple of value veterans to them. What did I want to say? There was something that you touched on as far as, the safety thing. And, we've touched on this, and I don't want to go too deep into it. I'll just say this, because there is a lot of consternation right now about that combined safety number. And especially when you add, bringing Neal back at a second round tender, if that's what they do. I don't expect I'll be shocked if we get to opening day next year and both of those guys are playing on their exact deal that they're playing on.
I think Jamal's contract will be completely reworked.
Absolutely. I think both sides will be motivated to do that and to restructure it in a way that, he still gets his money, maybe even a little bit more up front, and maybe take some of the guarantees, convert salary to bonus, that kind of thing. And so it does give them an out in case he doesn't come back healthy, but allows them to get that cap number down a little bit this year. So again, structure, let's wait and see what happens, because a lot can be done.
And I think the important thing to remember, I love free agency. I think it can really complete a team. But I also know that that's a little difficult for people, right? Like it's for teams to go out there, because those free agents often, and I had a huge long conversation about free agency on another podcast. And, people always reference Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett. That was a weird year. Go back and look at it. There was a lockout. Like there was all kinds of, it was a depressed market. It was like a whole deal. That's not going to happen again. But if they are going to spend any money on a free agent, it has to be at linebacker. There are so many good, decent linebackers out there that could completely change this team at free agency. And I really hope, because at defensive end, this draft is great for them, right? They're great for pass rushers in this draft, but I think linebacker is where you spend your money on free agency.
Yeah, I like that idea. And linebacker is one of those positions that when you take away the elite top and the cream of the crop, those guys, the Roquan Smiths and the guys and Bobby Wagner's that are making the big money, it really drops down into a pretty reasonable group. Teams typically don't like to pay inside linebackers for sure. Mikes and Wills, big time money, unless they're that kind of guy that, you move around and you play off the edge and things like that. So there is some value to be had there. One more question for you. As I look ahead to the draft and dive deep, the All-Star games are next week, Senior Bowl, Shrine Game. Can't wait to see some of those future Seahawks playing in those games. I just want to throw this at you because I've done a million mock drafts and I've had a million discussions about drafts over the last couple of weeks. It's a very, very hot topic and people are very passionate about what they should do. And we've talked about it again here today. Got to go defense, right? But John Schneider just went on the radio this week and said, we're going to take best player available. Okay. What is Dayna O'Gorman going to do if the Seahawks use one or, heaven forbid, both of their first-round picks on offensive players?
I will lose my ever-loving mind. Here's the thing. This is a very defense-heavy draft. So we need – okay, let me get this calmed down. If they pick a center, I'm good with it. Right. I haven't even looked at the center market. I know there's a couple good ones out there. The Seahawks need a all-time great center, right? We know that. Austin Blythe is fine. I don't want fine at center anymore, right?
Yeah. So
that one I could swallow. But you tell me that you can't get other good offensive players further back in the draft. I don't know about that. So I really think at least the first round needs to be defense. The second round, I am okay with one of the two of them being an offensive player and not a running back. We're good there. Just re-sign Rashad Penny, which is a whole thing I'm all about after rewatching week 1, and then just have him and Walker and be ready to go.
I asked that because I want you to be prepared.
Oh, Dan, my heart will break.
I don't think there's any chance they go offense at 5. Because they're not going to go quarterback there. That's going to be a defensive player. I do think there is a very strong likelihood that the 20th pick is used on an offensive player. So I just want to
like a wide receiver. Tell me what kind. Tell me what kind.
Like I think wide receiver makes a ton of sense in that range. Ton of sense. A ton of sense. So I'm going to be reminding you. I'm going to remember this, and I'm going to be reminding you when that happens. Dayna, let's wait until all 7 rounds are done, and let's see how it shakes out. Because day 2 is a great day for defense and interior offensive line. So I just want to start the process of getting you ready.
Well, now you've given me a headache, Dan. Just kidding.
Oh, we got to wrap it up. This is long for us.
It is long.
For us. We haven't talked in a while, and we're not going to be able to talk again on the Field Goals moniker or under the Field Goals banner after the 28th of February. Again, a reminder. Tell people where they can find you on Twitter and where they can listen to you now so they can start to prepare for when this podcast will not exist.
Sure. So I'm at Dayna OG, and it's Dayna OG, and on Twitter. And then oh my God, I have so many posts. So I do the Our Turf Football podcast every Tuesday night at 8:00. We do that live on YouTube. And I've been doing that for 10 years. And then every Wednesday through the season, and then hit or miss in the off season, I do the Real Hawk Talk with the Hawk Blogger crew on Wednesday nights. And then I do a podcast every other week with a couple of football fans from the UK. And so that one's really fun because it gets really interesting. And so that's called End Zone Scoop. So you can find me at any of those, and all of them are on Twitter.
Nice. Busy woman. Yeah. I'll be doing this through the end of February. And then if you follow me on Twitter, you've already seen some of the branding concepts I've thrown out there. I'm just going to roll right into talking about Seahawks. And so if you used to listen to either of my former podcasts, what I have done already to prepare is if you used to listen to my original podcast, The Dan Cave, I just rebranded that same feed. So if you subscribe to that, you'll get notifications when I start doing new shows there. Until then, follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, because we're going to have a lot to talk about over the next month, and love that engagement and interaction. And obviously any news about what I do after Field Goals will be then. But we have another month.
We have a couple weeks. Yep. We
have a lot of stuff to talk about. Griffin Sturgeon's going to be joining me on Monday. You've had him on the show before. He's so great. We're going to break down some X's and O's. He's a guy that understands that language better than I do. And I can't wait to pick his brain about scheme and scheme fits and some players that he thinks would fit from this draft. He started to dig into that and try to break down. He's really good about talking about that stuff in layman's terms, 3-4 versus 4-3, and how that affects the edge guys. We're going to dig into that on Monday. And then we've got some other stuff coming up too. So Dayna, thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, of course.
We'll just try to make the most of this over the next 30 days or so, and enjoy those games tomorrow.
You too.
It's going to be fun. All right, Dayna O'Gorman, I am Dan Viens. This is the Field Goals Podcast for now. Again, subscribe to this podcast if you want to keep getting notifications over the next month of things we're going to talk about, because there's a lot to break down. Enjoy championship weekend. We'll be talking to Hawks with you again soon. Thanks for listening. Wow. Now let's just stop it. I'll edit that little last piece out. Banged my mic. Wait, where are you? There you are.
It says we're still live.
Let's end that.